Yeah. My dad he was always pushing my brother and I to succeed. His motto was, if at first you don't succeed, ask yourself what you did wrong. So it's kind of funny, but he just really wouldn't tolerate B's on our report cards or on our papers, and it was like everything had to be done excellently, I guess.
Yeah.
The highest crime that we could pretty much commit was to be slothful. It was the standard that he held himself to, and so because we were his children, obviously he was going to hold us to the same standard because that was kind of the example he set for us.
Right.
But I felt like he really especially held me to that standard. My brother, he's a lot more independent than I am, and so my dad and him, they kind of like butted heads a lot. I think that my dad finally got to the point where he kind of assumed that he just had to let him go, and that he was going to succeed in something. Maybe it wouldn't be what my dad wanted, but that he kind of just needed to.
Absolutely.
But I was a lot more moldable. Like I was a lot more easily influenced, and so my dad really capitalized on that.
Okay.
He was constantly demanding better and better of me. When I would like mow the yard, he would walk the perimeter, and if parts of it weren't even, he would make me mow the entire thing again, not just the parts that weren't even, because it had to be totally even. So he would really concentrate on my homework. He would read over all my papers when he was home, and he would walk through every problem he found in them and tell me all the things that I did wrong. And it was really hard because it was really a lot of criticism, but then in a way, like, it made me able to handle criticism, and it helped me to be very driven. And so that's really helped me to get where I am today. But
No, absolutely. Well, that drivenness and that attention to detail is always a positive thing. It's a very good skill set to have. But as a kid, how did it make you feel when your father would hold you to such a high standard?
Well, when I was a kid, I really hated it. I just couldn't understand why everything I did was wrong.
Yeah.
I remember knowing that my dad was coming home and waiting in my room and being so nervous that I would kind of start physically shaking because I was just so afraid that there was going to be something that he found that I had done wrong this time, and he never disappointed. There was always something that I hadn't done right. So there was always a little minutia kind of thing that I had overlooked. It didn't matter everything else that I had done. When I finally got to high school, my dad and I kind of had it out.
Okay.
We went through a 2-year period where we couldn't talk to each other unless we were really shouting at each other. It was my junior and senior year, and it was only really when I left home and went to college that my dad and I actually started speaking to each other instead of shouting to each other. The funny thing that I realized was that he only called to talk to me after my first semester of grades had gone home.
Wow.
And he never told me why, but when I looked back, I figured out that it was because he had seen that I'd made all A's my first semester. So he realized that I could kind of make it in college without his help. And since then, we've really only had kind of a strictly business relationship.
That must have been very difficult. That must have been very hurtful for you too. I would assume there would be some feelings of hurt when you realized that later on about why he would only call after you had performed. Do you feel like there may be some bitterness towards your father? Do you feel like there might be any of that inside?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, now that we talk about it, I think he may be the reason that I developed these anxiety attacks. As a little kid, I kind of was carefree. I was responsible, but I was carefree, and it was only when I got older and further into school that I really started to feel pressure from my dad, and it just
absolutely makes sense. I imagine this is a lot to be processing right now. I completely, I can imagine that this is very difficult for you to be working through. But and it's very understandable, because the father wound is one of the deepest wounds that we as humans can experience, because as a child, as well as people, we always find our self-worth in the authorities above us. And as a kid, our father is the ultimate authority. So if we're not able to get that approval from him, if we don't feel like our father approves of who we are, then we don't have any kind of frame of reference for us to feel self-worth. And so we can feel rejected. We can feel like we don't count, or that we don't matter. But what I'm going to ask you to do right now is, it might be painful, but if you can just give it your best shot, I think it might be able to really help break down some of the walls, some of the barriers here. Just can you try this with me? I want you to imagine that I'm your father, and what would you say to me if I was sitting here? What would you do to me if you knew that there were no consequences for your actions? For anything you say or anything you do, there will be no negative effects. What would you do?
I hate you. I hate that you never thought that I was good enough, and I hate that you chose John over me constantly. And I hate that I was never important enough for you to come to any of my important events, my games, and I hate that you never told me that you were proud of me. I hate that you were able to hold your approval over my head, like something that I could carrot in front of a horse, but I could never get to it. And I hate myself because I let you do that. I just can't you just say that you're proud of me just once? Can't you look at everything that I've accomplished and that I was able to do on my own, and it be good enough somehow yet? And I just don't know what I have to do to make you proud of me.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. Okay, look it out. You are a very brave woman to come in here and to deal with these issues. You showed a lot of courage. You showed a lot of courage. You came in here and you openly dealt with these issues. You haven't been defending your father. You haven't been hiding behind things, but you've just been facing them and confronting them head on. That takes a lot of courage. And I know if your father was here right now, somewhere deep inside he would be proud of you too. Not just because of what you've accomplished, but because of who you are. And he would look at you and say, you are a very courageous woman, and he is proud of you. And so as a follow-up to this session, I think this week, if you would go home and write a letter to your father, write a letter and tell him the things that you've been feeling, tell him how it makes you feel, how it's made you feel your whole life, that when you feel like he's been choosing John over you, when he's put these pressures on you, just write it all down. You don't have to send him this letter. You can if you want to, if you feel like that would bring healing, but you don't have to send it, but you should write it, because that way you can get your emotions out on paper. You can express them, and you can explore the emotions as you're writing it out. You'll begin to discover things, other roots that are inside, and you can put those down on paper. So if you can do that this week, then we can talk about how you felt during the process of writing it next week when you come in. But I am very proud of you, and it is a pleasure to have met you, Susan. And I look forward to meeting you next week again.